Welcome to Behind the Build. I'm your host, Jonathan Jacobs. And today on the program, I have a gentleman from New York City, practice, whose work is award-winning both from a national perspective and international perspective, having won multiple awards, including the most recent award for their hotel in Banff, Canada, despite the fact that they're in America. That was the HD Award in Hospitality Design for their Moxie Banff Hotel. Today I have with me Andrew Kline of Workshop APD.
Hi, Jonathan.
Andrew, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before you hear more, I just got to tell you this really funny story. So today I was rushing, taking my daughters to a program at the end of the day. I had a quick turnaround time, but dinner still had to happen. I boiled water, and minutes later, pasta was ready. That's induction at work. It's real life, it's time driven, in a crunch. And I think back on my old electric range, and pasta in 15 minutes, not really possible. With induction, it's reality. And if I step away from it, I don't have to worry about my kids burning themselves on the surface. Kaplan's carries the best. Wolf, Miele, Jen Eyre, Fisher and Pickel, and more. If you want to connect with a Kaplan's rep, I'm happy to make that introduction. Reach out to me directly. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca. And I'll introduce you to someone there, and you'll find out why after decades they've been serving us and our clients so well, and you'll get that same experience for yourself. Now, let's get back to Andrew. So I want to just give some basic background to Workshop APD for those that are unaware. They've got offices in New York City and Minneapolis, and satellite offices in Greenwich and Nantucket and South Florida and LA and California and Colorado. There's over 90 people at the practice, and they are designing not only for the United States, but as I just mentioned, Canada and internationally. So Andrew, who's with us today, is a principal and has a long history, both not only at Workshop APD, but in design in general. So Andrew, thank you for taking time out of your day to be joining me here.
Of course, I love your podcast.
Thank you. So I always like to start things off with this basic question, and that is, at a young age, what was it for you that kind of sparked your interest in curiosity in design or art or science or math? Like, what was your inspiration early on?
Yeah. What's funny is I feel like this is my favorite question that you ask because I'm always wondering how people get their start. And when you look back at your life, I think it kind of changes when you're in it. You don't really know why you're being drawn to certain things. But looking back at it, all of the creativity started with my grandfather, who was an artist.
What kind
And
of artist?
he was a graphic artist. He did really cool like prints, but also worked in advertising back in the day. Kind of the mid-century madman kind of guy, but not high
Yeah.
stakes New York. But he was in Ohio and Michigan. And yeah, I think that's where the creativity came from. He passed away when I was really young, but I think that kind of creativity kind of transcends generations. And my mom was always super crafty because she got that interest from her dad, but she never pursued it professionally.
Right.
But she made sure that it was a big value for us growing up. And so at a very early age, she had me in drawing lessons after school and, doing kind of crafts with her, like
Yeah.
basket weaving and things like that she was interested in.
Right.
And that was kind of where I caught the bug, I guess, for creativity, for artistry.
Do you have like these any recollections of like how old were you when your grandfather passed away?
I was like 3 or 4.
Right.
So I never got to like explore creativity with him.
Okay.
But throughout my life, everybody was always like, oh my gosh, you're Jerry. You're like your grandpa Jerry. Like he was a very creative person. So when I would, start to get involved in painting, I was really into art school or art classes in school.
Yeah.
They would be like, oh yeah, Jerry would paint like that, or things like that.
Okay. And so, do you have any of these recollections from your youth where you would do some piece of art, whether it was a painting or a drawing or something, and like, did it make it to the fridge, or was this the kind of thing where like your room was covered with the on the walls with your art, or was it in a duotang or a folder? Like, how did you enjoy your own work?
Well, I don't really remember as a young kid, definitely on the fridge, and like my mom had like stacks of it, kind of, keep what's really good and kind of you got to get through all of the stuff you make in elementary school.
Yeah,
But I just remember art always being my favorite subject, and then taking drawing classes after school was one of the things I loved the most. And then when I really got into high school, that's when I was like, oh, this can be something. And I think everybody has that one teacher who really guides them.
yeah.
And mine was Lois Bachman.
Thank you, Lois.
Yeah. She was my art teacher, and she just created a really like great safe place for the creative kids, and I would try and spend as much time as I could in her art room.
Do you
And I always thought I was going to be a fine artist, not an architect or a designer.
okay? Do you remember what the room looked like? Like, if you walked into that room,
Huh,
did you
kind
walk
of.
in classroom was to the left, or did you walk in and classroom was to the right, or was it a long classroom with the door in the center? Was
It
there lots
was
of light? What was it like?
lots of light. It
Yeah.
was a corner room on the third floor. This building doesn't exist anymore. It was torn down, unfortunately. Very like old high school. And yeah, I can't remember what color it was. I think it was pale yellow. I remember where the sinks were and like cleaning out brushes. I
Yeah.
remember like, no AC, windows open, breeze coming through the room. But what's interesting about Lois is she was also my elementary art teacher.
Okay.
So I went to a very small school, Montpelier, Ohio, Montpelier exempted village schools, and I graduated with like the same 95 people that I started kindergarten with. I still have
Crazy.
friends from preschool. Shout out to my friends from preschool, Nikki Klum in particular, and like people that like I started this journey with that I was, all the way through senior year. And yeah, so Lois was actually my first, second, third grade art teacher. And then she, during the time I was in middle school, moved to the high school. And then when I got to high school, she was also my art teacher there.
Wow.
So
So, so you saw the evolution of her as a teacher, while she saw the evolution of you as a
she was
student.
already an expert. She actually retired the year I graduated. And, I remember her coming to my graduation party, and we had a lot of my artwork up. We did a little like show of
Yeah.
my artwork, and it was like so impactful to have her there. And she's the one who convinced me that I could go to art school.
Just before we hear a little more, I got to tell you, this time of year, windows matter. Fresh air, cool breeze, no stress about rain. With the doors, windows open inward, protected, easy, convenient. The handle is smooth, the mechanism flawless. My little kids use them without hesitation. Even my youngest can slide our 8x8 back door, a lift and slide, open like she's Superwoman. She'll even do the flex, as if you're wondering which way the beach is. And the doors make it simple. They're strong, effortless, sleek. If you want to learn more about the doors, I highly recommend reaching out. They're a European incredible system that you could have in your projects at a price point that makes sense to both you and your client while not compromising on design. Their offices are in Mississauga and they're serving Canada and parts of the US. Email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca, and I'll connect you with Martin, Marta, and their amazing team at the doors. Now, back to Andrew.
So in my junior year, I'd been talking with her about like what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I was like, I think I want to be a fine artist, but I'm so afraid of not having a job because there's this side of me that's so interested in business. And my dad was a CEO, and I get that from him and blah, blah, blah. And she like
Blah,
started
blah,
talking.
blah.
It that stuff,
Leave
the
the business
business
alone. Let's
side.
stick on the creativity side.
I like both. But yeah, and she kind of talked to me and my parents about like what art school was and that maybe I should go to art school because I don't know that I had awareness of that growing up in a cornfield. I think it's really interesting people who first get introduced to interior design and architecture. It's like, how did you even know that was an option?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't grow up in the kind of lifestyle where we had an interior designer or that we used an architect, right? Like,
Yeah.
and Lois kind of opened my eyes to that. So my junior year of high school, she suggested, I think it was her, that I go out to Otis School of Art and Design in LA for their summer program. They do a great high school summer program.
Okay.
And you can kind of pick a major for the summer, right? In quotes. Nobody can see my air quotes. And you go out for like 4 weeks. And like being a kid who grew up in a cornfield in Ohio to fly out to LA and live in a hotel with a bunch of other creative kids and go to class all day for 4 weeks. Like my mind exploded. I met people who like opened my horizons socially, in creatively, educationally, and I just knew that I had sort of found my tribe
Yeah.
when I went out there to art school as a junior in high school. And that changed everything. I came back my senior year and I was like, I have to go to art school. And what's funny was I went out there to study graphic design. So I thought maybe that was a way for me to do something creative and also make money, which hindsight 2020, my grandfather was a graphic designer. So here I'm like kind of picking up on
Yeah.
this idea.
Yeah.
But it didn't end up being graphics for me. That I went to Columbus College of Art and Design. I chose it because they kind of follow the Bauhaus style where you do a foundation year.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to pick a major my first year because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Well, it's hard. I mean, how can you really know at that age? Like,
I mean, I don't think you can.
you
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
The big ask. Yeah. So sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I went to art school. Like I knew that that was sort of my tribe. And my first year did a foundation year, and then my second year I actually went into fashion design. I thought I was going to be a fashion designer. I wanted to focus on menswear. And I realized within the first semester that it wasn't the right fit for me. And so I started thinking about what I really loved about art school
Hmm.
and how I had previously thought I wanted to be in graphic design. And my sister was studying interior design, but she had moved on to urban planning because interior design was the wrong scale for her. And I was like, oh my gosh, actually, I think I'm an interior designer because I love creating compelling presentations, crafting a narrative. I love 3D space. I love how you can design a space to evoke an emotion. And so all these things were I was sort of realizing. And my school had interior design. So I transferred into the interior design program
I
and got my BFA.
I want to know, and we'll go more into what you just said, but I want to know when you went to the school, did anyone that you had met in LA join you at that school, or were or and or anyone from your past in Ohio join you at that school, or were you on your own?
I was on my own. I remember the like terrifying moment where my parents drove away and I was like, going back up to my cinder block dorm room
Yeah,
and being like, wow, I don't know anybody here, which was kind of freeing and amazing. Being a creative person, it was like, okay, I can leave, like my whole high school experience behind and really become the person that like I want to be here.
yeah,
One interesting thing though is I went to school in Columbus, Ohio. And if anybody's from Ohio, lots of people go to school in Columbus, Ohio because of the Ohio State University.
yep,
So I had friends from high school who were in the city. They just weren't at the school I was at. So enough freedom to really enjoy Columbus College of Art and Design on my own, but also people nearby if I needed them.
yeah. Okay. And so, what was the experience like over those foundational years of school? Like, do you find that you're drawing upon a lot of what was gained from your education at that time? And has it evolved, or do you feel like what you had learned there was like a general okay foundation and really didn't like set you up for what you were expecting, or what
No, it was an amazing education,
it was? Okay.
actually. And I think I I still am. I think that's why, like, I am a little bit of a workaholic, but I was kind of an anxious student. I was very hell bent on making sure I was getting an education that would set me up for success. I always had this like anxiety in the back of my mind that was like, did I pick the right school? Am I doing the right courses? Am I pushing myself enough to differentiate myself so that I can be successful when I graduate? And because my sister went to University of Cincinnati, they have an amazing program, the DAP program. And so I was always in the back of my head being like, oh, should I have gone to UC? And is interior design the right spot for me? Should I have gotten a degree in architecture? Which I then went and got a degree in architecture, but I did it very unconventionally I think, by getting a BFA in interior design first. And I think it was the best thing I could have done for me. It allowed me to make my design practice a continuation of an interest in fine art, which, and not that there's any wrong way to come to a design practice, but I think that allowed me to blur the lines between art and design, which helps you maybe to free yourself up conceptually.
Right.
And what was awesome about the program I went to, it was really set up to like get you moving when you get hired. Like, it wasn't hyper conceptual. It was about designing real spaces for real people and having the skills that people needed when they hired you,
Mhm.
making sure that you could work in the softwares of the time. I mean, now we don't use those softwares, but AutoCAD, if Form Z was what we were 3D modeling in back then, or the beginnings of SketchUp, maybe a hand drawing perspectives with markers, like things that like got me a job before I was even graduated.
When I feel
Um,
like when you held that marker, you felt kind of at home.
yeah, totally. Yes, because I'd taken color concept
Yeah.
courses and figure drawing courses and painting courses. Yeah. So that was, I think it was a great foundation because it got me ready to really work. I got hired as an intern before I had graduated at what's called L Brands now. It was called Limited back then. And like, I was getting a paycheck, my last years, because I'd switched majors, I was only part-time at school. I just had to finish my studio. So I was basically able to work full-time
Right.
at L Brands. And I had those skills to work in a corporate office and like create presentations for the CEO and coordinate with the great mentors and designers I got to work with there. And then I was able to say, okay, now I want to like explore a larger scale. And because I graduated in 2008, even though I had that internship, I was a little bit nervous about the economy. I was like, this is a good time to continue my education and go to grad school.
Right.
And hopefully the economy figures itself out while I'm there. So that's when I went to Cranbrook Academy of Art. Again, an Academy of Art. I had a really hard time choosing where I wanted to do my master's program. I thought I was going to go to UC or RISD, and I visited those places and Pratt. And then I visited Cranbrook, and it was just such a weird place and such a unique program that I was like, this is the right fit for me. And I don't know if you know anything about Cranbrook, Jonathan, but they only accept like 12 students a year, and
I
there's no courses. It's all independent study
There's no
under
courses.
there's no courses. It's an
Yeah.
art academy in like the truest sense. So it has, I don't know, like 8 departments, like painting, sculpture, 2D, 3D. 3D is more like furniture
Yep.
based, graphic design, printmaking, jewelry making, and architecture. And I studied under Bill Massey there. He was doing a lot of very early work in kind of like CNCing SIP panels and this idea of more architecture from a technology point of view.
Right.
But you really set yourself up for what you want to study for 2 years, and then you actually build things with your hands. It's very craft based.
Right.
And that was kind of the thing. That was the hook. So, like I said, hindsight 2020, when I look back at all these choices I made, which were terrifying choices back then, and I didn't know why I was making them, they were all tied to craft. at some point. So like my grandfather was an artist. My mother kind of picked that up in her crafts that she did. I remember basket weaving with her and her putting me in drawing
Yeah.
courses, and really the idea that art was so important to me led me to art school, which led me to an unconventional master's program in architecture, which eventually led to New York, working for some folks there, L Brands, then Yabu Pushelberg, and then I ended up at Workshop APD, which is also very craft based. We
Right.
consider ourselves, you know, modernists who enjoy craft.
So I'm going to get to the current role shortly. I do want to ask you about the experience at Yabu Pushelberg because I know that you were working in hospitality while you were there.
Mm-hmm.
So, so what did that look like from a design perspective and a travel perspective? Like everything you had previously done was rooted in the US.
Yeah.
So what did it look like when you went there and now all of a sudden you're looking at projects that are well beyond the US? And like did that include travel and immersing yourself in those cultural experiences? Like what was that like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually did a lot of international work when I was at L Brands
Oh,
before
you
I went
did.
to
Okay.
Yabu Pushelberg, because that was like 2000. I was like an intern there, 2008. Then I graduated from grad school in 2010, and they brought me to New York.
Okay.
And that was when US brands were really licensing a lot to other countries. So I did some funny work for them. I took a Canadian brand called La Senza that they had purchased.
I know Licenza.
And yeah, I did 13 brands in Australia.
Okay.
They were a huge success. They stayed open for about 6 months. Um, and then they went out of business. Rest in peace, La Senza Australia. So I got to travel a little bit there, but none of the work was terribly like interesting that I did at L Brands, but it was super foundational, and I learned how to communicate with people in a corporate atmosphere and how to create systems for people to work together. And then I went to Yabu Pushelberg, which was like a creative explosion,
Yeah.
right? Like just
Like
genius team.
Cranbrook injected with adrenaline.
Yeah, and big budgets.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. And I worked on a lot of international projects, but kind of the way the hospitality projects were structured there, they take so long to design and build that I never actually got to travel to
Right.
any of
Okay.
my projects,
Okay.
unfortunately. But I all of a sudden the scale was larger. The finesse in storytelling and narrative was greater. And just the talent of those folks, just being around them was energizing. And it was an amazing place to be a young designer. And when I see Glenn and George today, I always thank them because I'm like, I learned so much working in your studios. In Glenn is a master planner, space planner, and that's my favorite part of starting a large project, is really thinking about the guest experience, particularly in hotels, how someone's going to move through a space.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from him, sitting around a table sketching with him. So, an amazing experience.
And so what led you from there now to workshop?
Yeah. So, I was a senior designer at Yabu Pushelberg, and some, they've been around for quite a while and had a really good senior leadership team in place. And
Yep.
it didn't really feel like there was a growth trajectory for me. I had kind of talked to them about wanting to run a team and be a design director there. And there were some conversations about it, but there were a lot of really good people at that level.
Yep.
And so someone reached out to me, a recruiter, and said, have you ever thought about Workshop APD? And I didn't really know them at the time. So I went and met with Matt and Andrew. And I immediately felt that there was this huge potential at Workshop APD because they were smaller. I think they were just around 30 people at that time. And there was a great energy like I had felt at Yabu Pushelberg. And there was it was like I could just feel that it was a seedling about to grow. Like it was about to take off. this firm had a great background and a bright future, and it felt like someplace that I could go and grow the business mind, the organization side, the design director kind of position, take that leap from designer into design director and really help build a team, coalesce a team that was already there.
Right.
Um, yeah.
And this was 2017. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I think 2016, 2017. Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
And so you come into the role, and what was the role at the time that you took on?
They called it design director.
Okay.
It was I think the first time they had really hired someone that was going to fit in that space between the fabulous designers and project managers they had and themselves. So it was a little bit of a tricky
Layering.
situation. Yeah. There were some people who were like, who is this guy? Why is he here? And it was the first time that they had, through my interview process, we had actually talked a lot about like studio culture and a lot about studio structure. And at the time, from what I understand, they were working as like small project teams reporting to a principal, kind of all as one larger studio.
Yeah.
And so we really spoke about breaking the studio into two studios and me coming in as a design director for one of those studios. So I was the first design director, so to speak, that they had brought in to do that on the interior architecture, interior design kind of mixed multidisciplinary studio.
And how did that work for you? Because this is essentially it's a brand new role.
Yeah. And
And
what's interesting about it, sorry to cut you off there,
that's
but
okay,
what's
don't worry.
interesting about it was that was the role I had sort of been searching for at Yabu Pushelberg. At
Right.
Yabu Pushelberg at the time, they called them team leaders, but people who would run a team,
Yeah.
creatively direct a team underneath the genius of George and Glenn.
Yeah.
And there just wasn't that space for it. So through conversation with Matt and Andrew and kind of explaining my interests in leading creative endeavors, but also being involved in the business side of things and understanding that was my next step, that they sort of were like, you know what, I think that is missing at Workshop. We've talked a lot about bringing in a level of leadership underneath us, and I was able to make that big leap. A little terrifying, to be honest, to like leave such a close knit team that I was on at Yabu Pushelberg and sort of my design heroes at Yabu Pushelberg to go to this firm that I really didn't know that much about.
Right.
But I knew it was going to be a great area for me to grow as a leader in design.
So when you joined, did you have to go ahead and work on developing the job description for what your role was going to look like? And
Yeah.
did that evolve over the first few years while you were kind of writing the playbook for the practice on how things are going to get filtered into you and what it's going to look like as it moves up and discuss like what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I would say my time at Workshop has been a lot about collaborating with Matt and Andrew and talking about structure and building kind of role clarity as well as future expansion. And the first step was that design director role, kind of figuring out what that was. The first year I remember was a lot of coming up with how we wanted to organize things, like how we're organizing not only our project work, introducing some organizational structure into how we did that, how we were reporting back up to Matt and Andrew, how work was flowing through me and also through people who used to have, more of a maybe face to face with them on every day, and navigating how that changes culture and also can offend people, walking a little bit on eggshells. I had to prove myself to a lot of people who had been there for a long time, and they've become some of my closest collaborators and friends since then. And it was also like a lot of future discussion. Matt and Andrew have always been very supportive, and they are visionaries. They've always wanted Workshop to grow beyond what it was when they started it, and they purposely named it Workshop because it's not just their company. They want it to have a growth for years to come. So meeting people who are visionaries and want to support that kind of idea was revolutionary for me at that time in my career. and we would sit around the table and be like, well, maybe we should structure teams this way. And through the years, things changed. Like for a while, we had residential interior designers sitting in my studio. Later, we decided that maybe it was more beneficial to have all the residential interior designers sit together underneath a different design director. And that's how it's set up today. But we kept all the commercial interior design on our team, on my team that I lead. And throughout the years, we created an associate level at Workshop APD. We grew from 35 people to where we are now at 94. And we created multiple studios with design directors. And we've really elevated this leadership team underneath the founding principles. And I've been very lucky to be a part of that and to be a part of the conversations, to be at the table for some really interesting perspectives on how to grow a company that I probably would not have gotten anywhere else. So it was the right move to make.
Yeah. You want to hear that answer? I know. We're going to get to it in just a sec. But first, I'm going to tell you about some strength in steel, because steel can be complicated. And in my own home, I have HVAC ducts that had to run through a beam. 4 separate openings cut with precision to allow the ductwork to move directly through a steel beam. Okay? And I turned to Henry Rotberg Steel. Why? Because we've been working with them for a long time, and because I knew that the outcome would be what it was, and that was that Rotberg nailed it. Perfect execution. They delivered shim plates in every size, gave us the right contacts for installation, even welding, when the timing was right. And the result? A house that's solid. No creaks, no cracks, settling hasn't touched it. That's Rotberg Steel. Simply strong. If you want to learn more, I'm happy to connect you with Brett and his team. Email me, Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca, and you too can experience what it is to work with a great team that supports amazing projects. And now, back to Andrew. And when you started with the practice, what types of projects had they been taking on?
So Workshop really started as a high-end residential architecture firm that then very quickly turned into high-end residential architecture and interior design.
And how did that, do you know how that happened?
Well, I can tell you the most honest way to tell you is that Matt and Andrew want to touch all scales, right?
Yeah.
It was just a natural progression for them. They're designing these beautiful spaces, and so they also want to continue that story that they're building in the architecture and interior architecture to the furniture. So they expanded to that before I had joined. When I joined, they had just signed their first hospitality project. So obviously, like bringing someone from Yabu Pushelberg who'd been working on hospitality, like there was a lot of that continuity and idea there. But they had dipped their toes into some really, not dipped, they jumped into some development jobs, multifamily work, doing some really beautiful work there. So that's another area where I had worked at Yabu Pushelberg doing multifamily work. So it was with those project types in mind that I joined. And one of the things we spoke about when I first joined was, if we're going to be serious about hospitality design, we need to get more serious about product design too. They'd been designing some custom furniture for their residences, but when you're designing a hotel, you want everything in that guest room to be a bespoke design that's unique to that space. And so we very quickly kind of ramped up the product design side, and then decided that we wanted to start doing more product design for other brands. So we have tub and vessel with Callista, lighting with Arteriors, and so working and licensing with other brands. And then also a few years ago, we launched Workshop Collection, which was sort of a dream early on when I started at Workshop that we've been working towards, which is a collection of furniture available to the trade. We have our own showroom in our office. And it's stuff that we've designed for our own projects that we're now making available to our peers.
Right. So question on that. Is this a scenario where you are both designing and fabricating in a shop that you have, or is this getting
So we don't have our own shop. That would be amazing if we
Right. I was
did.
just, yeah.
The name workshop, yes. I totally agree. We work with some great factories in North Carolina, a couple overseas,
Okay.
some vendors in the Midwest to
Yeah.
create our products.
Okay. I know there's a studio, there are a couple studios here in Toronto, and one of them has like two or three of them that I know have these little independent shops that they work on, so that when they're like tired of working on some of the, or their creativity is lacking on some of their architectural projects, they go into their creative projects. Uh,
Yes, that sounds amazing.
and you
Uh,
just get hands on, and it's a different feel.
yeah, totally. I would love that. I think I get that kind of on my weekends. I'm a DIY kind of guy. So I have a place upstate where I'm right now, actually. And there's nothing that makes you understand an on-site problem like trying to do your own uh, construction project.
I'm with you. I mean, in no no real to, I don't know. I'm in the process of building two guitars,
Oh, wow.
and so to this point, like the when you get your hands onto it and you're going through that creative process, and you have to work on these small little details to make everything come together. It's a lot of fun to be able to get to that kind of stage of, what do you call it, life or your personal professional career, to just you're tapping into some of those elements of your youth in your mind
Yeah, totally.
at a different stage of life. It's a nice thing.
Yeah,
So
during the pandemic, I started throwing on pottery, ceramics at my friend Nona Hall's studio. And I hadn't done it since undergrad, which is another cool thing about going to art school. You can take pottery courses as electives. And yeah, I think the tactility of getting out of a screen,
yes,
hiding your phone for a couple hours, because that's my favorite thing about pottery. Can't really touch your phone because your hands are all messy, is really important. It's important for your memory, first of all. I
yeah,
think we're all starting to have terrible memories because we can just Google it. But also, I think it fuels your creativity in a way where all of a sudden you're thinking about that floor plan a
yeah,
little bit, but you're not like so focused on it that you can't. The best ideas come out of like the most random moments.
yes. When you allow those moments to happen and you stay
Right.
present in those moments.
Yeah, that's why everybody has good ideas like in the shower or brushing their teeth. You're
Yeah,
not really like focused so hard on the idea that you're blocking your creative process.
yeah. Okay, so let's go back to where we were, and that is, so you start crafting furniture from different places geographically. Those are now available for sale, and the brand, and that was an evolution of the brand. So you get to a point where you are scaling up to the point where you are now with 90 plus people, nearly 100 people
Hmm.
in practice, which is in itself just wild, right? When you think that you started and there were around 30 or so.
Yeah.
That
And
is,
and just to add to that, a lot of our growth happened during the pandemic. So I think the first few months of the pandemic were terrifying for on all levels for so many people, but for a lot of people professionally, we were all very nervous about what was going to happen.
yeah,
And to Workshop's credit, because we were a multidisciplinary studio that works on high-end residential, multifamily, hospitality, commercial work, when the hospitality stuff started to slow down and the commercial stuff started to slow down, we were able to easily pivot to more residential work and everybody was spending time in their homes. So all of a sudden we had a lot of clients calling us saying, hey, we want to build a new home or change this home or and so a lot of that growth happened when we were all kind of in this work from home hybrid situation. And there was this moment where we were all coming back to the office and we realized that we didn't have enough desks for everyone because we'd grown so much, which was, a good problem to have,
yeah.
but also a problem that we had to fix. So we took over another floor of the building at that time.
Okay. And so now, fast forwarding a couple of years into the role and what you're doing. So you're successful enough in what you had done to then be given the role as a principal. as a become part of the leadership team.
Yeah.
And,
And it wasn't, there had been stepping stones on the way, obviously. I started as a design director, and then, like I mentioned, Matt and Andrew created an associate level where we sort of elevated leaders within our studio. Other people, we had divided into multiple studios at that point. We'd elevated people to design director. And so I think I became an associate principal, taking on a little bit more
yep.
responsibility, tiptoeing out of just running a studio to how can I support business development needs? How can I support the business and work on the business, HR and operational needs? And then just recently, yes, elevated to principal.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's I'm gonna give it a moment because I think that I'm sure you had that moment before, but it's a defining moment of a career to be able to have something as funny as it is that it's only an adjective to describe a role, right? It's so validating of years worth of commitment to the craft to be able to have that type of a recognition and to be able to then also promote and foster the growth of those that are now entering the field like you had. It's a I would say it's a pretty special thing, Andrew.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. I think you hit on something really important, the idea of mentorship in our industry. And from the moment I was a new workshopper, we call ourselves workshoppers, and I had the opportunity to lead a team, I've taken that very seriously. Like building a culture. What we do is not easy. We're not saving lives, but it's not an easy industry. It's an industry that you have to have passion to be in. And so I think it's really important that you do have some fun with it, even though we all probably take it too seriously. And I think it's really important that people in this industry create great team culture as well as opportunities for mentorship. Because when I look back, if I hadn't felt that through my design directors at Yabu Pushelberg or my interactions with the principals at Yabu Pushelberg, I might not have stayed in this industry. I might have gone somewhere else. And the things that I learned there made me love the industry even more
Yeah.
and put me where I am.
I mean, so I guess I will say this, and this is more of an open dialogue to those that are listening. If you're a student in school, and that could be whether you're, if you were, I don't know if people listening to this in high school, but if you're in university and you're looking at an internship or you're contemplating should you make a move to change your major or change schools or whatever it's going to be, you've got to really contemplate what it is. But the reality is that the risk that you take is generally going to lead towards some form of reward. And that might be something like you realize that what you had been doing was not what you should be doing. And
Right.
where you go, you might realize is actually terrible. But the reality is that you need to experience sometimes that thing that doesn't work for you to find the thing that does. And
Oh,
as
100%.
and as you continue to form the basis of what you value as a professional, you will land on something in some stage of your life that gives you a lot of satisfaction.
Hmm.
So you can't stop taking risk. You have to continue to take risk and take on a role that you don't know and move or do something that you weren't expecting to do, but you know in your heart you should, because it will ultimately land you in a position where hopefully you can then guide others to make those same decisions at some stage. That's my rant.
Yeah. I would just add to that. Sometimes
Yeah.
when you're in the thick of it too, you don't realize that you're making the right choice or doing the right thing. Like when you have these conversations and we're talking about like my career and I'm looking back at it, like it's all very rose-colored glasses, right? But like I remember working so hard at certain points in my career that in today's discussions about work-life balance probably weren't healthy, but like in retrospect I'm so glad I did it because I learned so much,
Yeah.
and it helped. My husband probably isn't happy that I did it, but like
Well, he
um
might not have been at the time, but maybe he is
right,
now.
yeah. I think like I just want to pause for a second and say
Yeah.
that like it you love it even when it's hard. And it's not all going to be really rosy at the time, but I think if you're passionate about something, that's what you should be doing for 40 plus hours a week, not something that felt safe, not something that, you know, is just lucrative. Find the thing you're passionate about, and then it'll all fall into place.
Yeah. And now I'll add to what you said. You said 40 hours, and I will say this, that if you're going to be doing something that you really like, you'll always put in more than the standard allotment of the workday, which is a 40-hour work week.
Yeah. I said 40 plus, by
I
the
know you
way.
did. I know. I'm focusing on the plus because you'll ultimately end up doing something that could have you doing 60 or 70 or 80 hours worth of work in a
Yeah.
week. And there
Yeah.
will be weeks where that feels like 70 or 80 hours, but there will also be weeks where that 70 or 80 hours does not feel like 70, 80 hours. It feels more like 40 because what you're doing is so enjoyable.
Yes.
And the creative team you're working with is like everyone's just meshing and it's working.
Hmm.
So okay, so enough of that rant. Let's talk about some of like the exciting projects that you've been able to acquire over the time. And I think a little bit I'm curious to know a little bit about your role because before we started recording, you were telling me about how some of the things or a lot of the things that you're doing are the sales elements to the business.
Yeah.
You're going over agreements and meeting and discovering clients and finding their needs and writing proposals. So like what does that look like? And what is the evolution of the projects that you've seen? How's that changed?
Yeah. Evolution of the projects and how they've changed. I mean, I think one really easy thing to point to at Workshop is that we've really been trying to grow in the hospitality design area. And like I said, when I started, the firm had just landed a hotel in Washington Heights in Manhattan, and it was the first hotel that they'd worked on. Since then, we've gotten the opportunity to work on some really great projects in Martha's Vineyard, Times Square, Moxie, Banff and Banff, Canada, working out west, working in some resort areas. And so moving not moving towards hospitality, adding hospitality into the practice has been really great. Also, I think our residential projects have just continued to get better and better. A lot of that is about people recognizing what you do or knowing somebody who lives in a home that you've designed and learning about you. I give a lot of credit to our PR and marketing team for telling our story of who Workshop is and being branding evangelicals for us and getting our name out there, because I really feel like the opportunities in residential have just blown my mind since being at Workshop and have grown to a level that surprises us sometimes. And for me, I never knew that I would enjoy residential design. So that's always been it's been an interesting part of my career that actually surprised me. I never considered myself to be a residential architectural designer or interior designer. And that's the majority of the work that we do. And I have built such a passion for it.
Well,
Um, the
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. You're about to
Well,
finish
I
this.
was just going to touch upon, you were talking a little bit about the business development side.
Yeah.
And I kind of started talking about when I look back at going to school, like always sort of focusing on this idea of being an artist and being creative, but always knowing that I was interested in business, which I really attribute to my dad. And I won't say blah, blah, blah about it in this section. But like I've had the great opportunity to be a part of those discussions at Workshop and to help put together proposals. We have an amazing business development principal, Jonah Kaplan, who's been with us. I think he joined right after I did. So working with him, collaborating with him on putting together proposals and being in the room to help sell a vision or an idea to a client is a huge part of what we do. Because if you don't continue to feed the studio, you can't have the studio. And I would just touch upon when people are putting together proposals and having those initial conversations with new clients, making sure that you're really listening, like you and I were talking about before the podcast, to that potential client and what they need and have empathy for what they need and see if you can help them solve the problems that they're having or create a narrative, a conceptual idea that's going to bring sort of their dream and vision to life.
Yeah. Taking it in. And as I take that in, I want to tell you, I was lucky. I grew up with a pool, standard in ground, rigid corners, limited give. But now, having worked at Walden, I'm introduced to a lot more. And I've seen Aquanta's bio design. I'd tell everyone to look into it. Instead of fighting the ground, it adapts to it. Expansion and contraction built in, up to 300 times per foot. Imagine that. Form the pool around what's there: rocks, roots, natural features. Keep the site's character, don't fight it. Entry can be gradual, in one spot or all around. No ladder hunt, just walk in. It's smarter, softer on the landscape, better to live with, and it looks incredible. Email me for an intro to Yuri and his amazing team at Aquanta. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca, and I'll fire off an email so that you can get to know Yuri and what he's capable of bringing to your project. Now, back to Andrew. Because I think what the major differences, when I talk about major differences, scales of practice. If you're running an independent practice and you're doing everything, right? Like you're just doing it all. And as you scale up and you get to a practice and it could be 5 to 10 people, again, you still have your hand in kind of everything. You get to the stage where you're at 30, right? And it's different. Now there's people that are focused on certain like really focused areas.
Yep.
And as you continue to evolve and you get to the point where you're at now, again, a lot more happens. But you have to have so much understanding of the operation of the business and how those independent people are going to be fulfilling the requirements that you need to hit your timelines, to fulfill the requirements that are in those proposals that the clients are expecting. Like there's a lot you have to deliver on an ongoing basis. Like your foot's on the gas the whole time.
Yeah, and you're constantly shifting scales. And I don't mean in the work we do, because we shift scales in the work we do too, from architecture, which, I'm involved in the architecture, the interior design, the product design, but you're shifting scales from a business perspective. You're working on, big initiatives to keep feeding the machine. And then all of a sudden you're in a meeting talking about how two materials come together and what the connection point should be. You're in a meeting talking large scale about the concept of the feeling or the vibe that you want in this restaurant. And then you're, immediately getting into the nitty gritty of how much is this going to cost for us to do as a fixed fee? And are we going to, make money on this job? But that's
That is
what
the
I
right.
love
Yeah.
about the job. Like, I think that like being able to pivot throughout the day and touch many different levels, many different scales, many different aspects of a practice is what fuels me.
Right. And so based on where you're at now, where do you think that, or have you planned for the practice to continue to grow? Is there a specific, is it res, is it hospitality, is it commercial?
Mhm.
Which of those streams are you looking to want to grow even more?
I,
Or is
I,
or is there one that you haven't yet done? Public.
ooh, that's interesting. We haven't done a jet yet. No, I mean, I think the answer is all of that, right? Because we as designers get energy from trying something new. So I think we want to definitely continue to push in hospitality. I think we want to push to get the hospitality jobs that we're doing to maybe be at the same level of experience as some of our residential jobs. People still put you in boxes, even creative people put in boxes. And I feel like we are constantly, and I say we because you're interviewing me, but Workshop is a collection of amazing people. I'm just a small piece of it. I think we never want to be put too much in a box. We want to keep trying new things. So for me, I'm very focused on continuing to grow the hospitality side, but I would never want to turn my back on any of the residential work we do or the multifamily work or the commercial work we do. I'm very interested. I've never Workshop has never really done that much retail, but that was where I started my career.
Right.
Um, Retail's sort of a dying art right now. So if we had the opportunity to work on really interesting retail, that would really fire my imagination and would fit within our plans for the company. Another thing we're seeing is some of our clients start to pull us into their workspaces, which
Right.
is really
From the
amazing.
residential.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
residential clients who are like, hey, I love what you did with my home. Could you do that in my office for my whole team? And that is super exciting as someone who's so passionate about touch points, interior touch points, exterior touch points. But the way we experience space, I find, is usually through the interior of a space. And so I'm super drawn to the idea of growing commercial opportunities like that for the firm. But we're not looking to leave out any of our verticals. We're very fascinated with creating a multidisciplinary firm. And one of our more recent kind of additions to our offering is branding. And that came out of the natural progression of, okay, we're designing the architecture of this hotel, the interior design of this hotel,
Yeah.
the furniture of this hotel. Why don't we also do the branding of this hotel? And then, of course, we created our own brand, Workshop Collection, which there was a whole process of creating that brand. So we've had the opportunity to start doing branding for some of our clients, and not just commercial clients either. We've branded some of the private residential homes that we've done. People wanted to have a name for the home, a logo for the home, something that they might embroider on towels or have water bottles made to really kind of complete that sense of place by naming it and giving it an identity after you've created it. So I would say that if there's a creative field that is adjacent to how people live or work or enjoy spaces, we would be interested in being a part of that.
Okay. And what about, I mean, this is just the random question. What about like public realm, public sector? Would anything there?
Yeah, I mean, isn't
I-
it like an architect and an interior designer's dream to do like a museum?
Right?
Yeah, I think
Library.
a library, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't say that those projects are knocking on our door right now because we have never worked in those areas. Again, it's back to the boxes. People
Yeah.
put you in a box.
But
Um,
I feel like with your design studio, with the collection studio or element of the studio,
yeah.
an installation in a park is not something that's like out of the question,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, Jonathan, hopefully someone hears this podcast
Yeah.
and thinks about us for that. Because what I will say is the way that I like to approach design, and a lot of designers, our teams also approach design this way, is by creating a conceptual lens, by creating a narrative, even residential, starting to think about a bigger idea, a story that we're telling about what we're designing. And that can be applied to all types of design situations. So, as much as like maybe people want to put you in a box to make you more understandable, if you really understand the creative process, you can apply that to so many different areas. And when you look at things that are being built in the world, sometimes the best projects are novel projects for that designer, something they've never done before. And so they approach it in a different way.
It's funny. So this topic of being like, kind of boxed in to
Mm-hmm.
a certain typology or design aesthetic. I just was having this conversation earlier in the week with someone about it and how, terrible example, but you can appreciate it. Like Jason Statham, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He did his first movie and it's like, it's a hit 'em up movie. And every role he's ever had since is the exact same guy in
Yeah.
every movie. He can he ever get into something that's going to be a suspense drama? Like probably not. the hardest part is how to sell someone to take the risk on something
Yep.
that goes beyond what you've done.
Hmm.
But when you show the foundation of where you were and what you've done, I think when we talk about the idea of, looking at doing a museum, well, we did residential and we've done hospitality and we've done commercial and now we've got our own collection. And so the evolution of the practice speaks to the evolution of what's possible. If
It's
you're not,
interesting. It's funny that people from the outside do like look at your work and they're like, "Oh, you're a residential
yeah,
architect, interior designer, product designer, whatever you are." Like I like to break out of like I don't want to just do architecture. I don't want to just do interiors. I don't want to just do product. I don't want to just do branding. It's like moving between these scales, between these disciplines is what I think makes a really holistic project and invigorates me as a designer. But I don't want to ever just do residential either. I want to work on hotels. I want to work on multifamily living and amenities. And there's a conflation of ideas between those that energizes the other. How many times has a client come to me? I had this great opportunity at a experience at a resort. Can we bring that into my own home?
right?
Or how
Yeah.
many times have I designed this very intimate, beautiful space for somebody? And then I am talking to a hotel company and they're like, we want to create more intimate, beautiful spaces where people feel like they're at home rather than at a hotel. And I guess to answer your question, how do you sell people on that? Maybe it's about talking more about the process of design,
Yes.
but I guess anybody out there who's listening to this, who's a decision maker, like don't pigeonhole yourself to firms who have done the exact same work before because you probably will end up getting similar work.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's okay to find creatives who work in a process or a collaborative way that you feel comfortable with and give them new challenges because you're going to get something really interesting out of it.
I concur. I do.
So I hope a bunch of museums give us a call this week.
Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. So if you've now listened to this, the number to call. So Andrew, outside of work, what do you like to do to be able to take your mind off of it? Is that travel? Is it food? Is it a hobby of knitting? Is it walking backwards? Like what do you like to do that's fun and interesting?
I love to travel for fun. I don't think I do it enough, but I think that travel energizes designers. I was recently in Japan for my birthday with my best friend and my husband, and the experience has definitely energized me. It's the consideration and care of the spaces that we were in really made me think a lot, and I see it coming out in the concepts I'm working on right now. On the weekends, we like to spend our time upstate as much as we can and get out of the city and go on hikes. I like to garden. I told you during the pandemic, I started doing some ceramics. So that's something I'm trying to get back into. I have to admit, I'm not I'm not good at it. And so that is in
Like
its
you say
own
with a
way
smile.
kind of fun
Yeah.
because I have to be okay with imperfections, which is
So
good
hard.
for a, but very healthy for me. And I've been thinking about getting back into painting to kind of go full circle back to where I was in high school and undergrad when I thought I would be a painter. I think that's my next creative outlet outside of the studio of the workshop.
What kind of painting? Acrylic, watercolor, spray paint?
I would love to do oil.
Okay.
That's what I did previously, but you kind of have to have some dedicated space to that. So I'll probably start with acrylics. They've gotten a lot better recently, and we'll see. But I don't know. That's in its infancy. Check in
Why,
with me in 6 months and see
why is it
if
in
I
its
actually
infancy?
started. I just haven't done it in so long that I've started to like kind of collect some materials. I have a nice easel. I just need to like jump in and do it. I haven't made the time for it, but I'm hoping this summer to make the time to get back into painting.
Well, what are your plans for the weekend? You have an
Gardening this
hour?
weekend. I have a lot of weeds in my landscaping.
Okay. And what about like when you're in the city? Are you close to work? Do you walk to work? Do you take the train? Do you drive? Like what's your experience like in that day?
Yeah. So I live in Jersey City, downtown Jersey City,
Yeah.
across from Van Borst Park,
Yeah.
which is like a really cute old neighborhood. And I take the PATH train into Midtown Manhattan
Yeah.
and go to work. We have two dogs, so I spend a lot of time in the park with my dogs
Yeah.
and a lot of time in the office.
All right, last few questions I want to ask you. Now, in the past, who are some of the more, I would say, potentially influential creatives that you came across that you felt that really kind of helped lay a foundation, or that you draw
Hmm.
upon for inspiration? Is whether they're well known or potentially some that aren't, and,
Hmm.
and who are those?
Someone that I always am kind of enamored by is Jaime Heian. He is a artist first and foremost, which, now saying it out loud, I'm like, well, that's why I'm drawn to him, who then moved into product and furniture design and then interior design. You might know him from the Yadro stores that he designed and the Yadro sculptures that he designed. Spanish designer, architect, and or I don't know if he would consider himself an architect, probably more artist designer.
Okay.
Why I've always been so interested in his work is that it really breaks through these boundaries of what's art and what's design. We talked a lot today about boxes. I don't really like to put things in boxes. I like the blurry lines. I think creativity happens at the intersection of scales, the intersection of architecture and interior design, or the intersection of interior design and furniture, the intersection of art and design. So I would say that Jaime Heian is definitely an inspiration. Recently, I was in Osaka at the World Expo, and I actually didn't spend very much time there at all. I was really there just because I wanted to see this enormous timber ring that So Fujimoto designed. It's like a 5-story tall ring, 2 kilometers long, that goes outside of the World's Expo. And I've always been enamored by So Fujimoto's work. And this was the first time I'd experienced any of it in person. And what was so magical to me about this thing that he created was, or his team, obviously, it's a team sport,
Yeah.
is like walking around a World Expo is like the only way you would want to be in a World Expo, because otherwise you're standing in lines waiting to go into a pavilion. And by the brilliance of creating a 2 kilometer ring around the outside of it is you and create it's a park with like beautiful like rooftop gardens and stuff, is that you get to see the buildings as if they're objects because you're far enough away from them
Right.
that you can experience them. And then it's this collection of very interesting buildings that all of these countries are proud of and have put money behind, that are so different from each other. And so I took an hour and walked around that with my best friend, and we were just like blown away. And then we were like, okay, we're good. We don't want to go inside any of these buildings or stand in lines. And we left.
I'm looking at it now and just the scale of this timber.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think when it was originally designed, he had that, or they had the idea that it would be taken apart and the timber reused.
Yeah,
I have a feeling, and I sort of read some stuff online, that like people like it so much it'll probably stick around.
it's unbelievable. Some of the spans, some of the posts, 22 meters high.
Yeah,
Wild.
it is really cool. Everyone should check it out.
Yeah. Andrew, I really truly greatly appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing all of this with me. Thank you for telling the story, your eloquence, and you mentioned it many times, and the passion that you have for what you do. I think definitely shine through in your dialogue. So thanks for giving us an insight both into your career, but also into the amazing work that Workshop's been putting out over the years. And if you're listening to this now and you're unfamiliar, I would highly recommend you check out our Instagram page. It's behind the build. There's a blue logo with some white writing. and you'll be able to see some of the amazing work that Workshop APD does. They're going to be selecting obviously what we feature on our Instagram page, given the fact that this is a medium that does not have visuals currently. We are not doing this with video, so I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Jonathan, the pleasure is all mine. And I just want to commend you and thank you for taking the time to create a podcast like this. I remember early on in my career, I would always like corner people that I worked with and be like, how'd you get interested in this? How'd you do it? What, like, is it possible? And like creating a platform where people can talk about how they've achieved what they've achieved or sort of stumbled upon what they've
Yeah.
achieved is really powerful. And thank you for doing that. And
Well,
thank you so much for having me on.
I'm going to tell you as you say that, I'm going to tell you why. Just because
Good.
I don't know that I've done this. I studied broadcast and print journalism in school, and I had a prof where all of the stories that I ever wanted to do were always human interest stories.
Mm,
I cared more about that, and I was always taught that if it bleeds, it leads.
interesting.
And it really, really upset me because I think that people are interested in learning about people.
Yeah.
Well, we also want to read about something bloody or whatever is going on. We want to learn about people. And I just didn't agree with her. At one point, actually, different prof, I pulled a story that was about a person because they wanted to make it about other stuff. There is such a redeeming quality to having someone be able to tell their own legacy in what they're creating, that it doesn't make sense to me to be able to go and find the critical elements of where they are not doing what they should be doing.
Hmm.
And in design and architecture, there is so much of that. There is so
Hmm.
many people constantly critiquing other people's work rather than trying to in some way celebrate. Whether there's one thing in it that you might like find the celebration in it, because
Yeah.
there's been so much effort that's gone into it.
That's a really great thing to keep in mind as designers. We're all used to being critiqued and we all do kind of critique each other. And it's not easy what we do. It's not easy being a creative. And so I appreciate that you celebrate creatives. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for doing this.
Of course.